look, you saw the title, you clicked on this. We don't need to talk about it. I'm just here to help a brother out. Um, so no, first like I'm happy that this is of interest to you. Um, I draw a lot of different things. If you see my channel before, I'm quite a variety artist, but I think that once I took art more seriously after about 4 years, when I was doing anatomy, I learned quickly that like I have a type that I really like to draw, and it really motivates me to draw. You know, I don't know what to make of it too much, but I'm really good at it, and I do it all the time. So now we're here, and now I'm really good at it, and I'm assuming you want to be too. I've made a video about like certain aspects to like my methodology of like illustration that I think is like kind of like a prerequisite before you kind of start getting into like stylization, because we're not talking about like normal proportions, we're talking about something a bit more funny, you know. So just to kind of recap a little bit, because I still think it's really important before you start getting frustrated. Um, I do think there's like levels to this before you start getting to like real style, and I'm not gonna go back into it too hard. But the idea is like, level one is like, oh, I can't draw a stick man or whatever. It's like, yes, you can. Just draw a stick man. Anyone can start there and practice there, right? Just get used to like physically drawing, because I think it's a bit of a stamina exercise, especially when like you're trying to do different things. Like it's a whole mental thing. So like it takes a minute. So just get used to drawing first, and that can take like a week, 2 weeks, even a month. Like it's not like supposed to be hard. And then level two, this is when we start to getting into more like proportions. And for this type of exercise, like it's really important you understand like what at the base level what a humanoid even looks like, because you know when we're drawing like stuff like this, like does not take a lot of effort to make something look creepy or weird. If you're gonna exaggerate a body, you need to make sure you have a really strong understanding of like how to do it, or it's gonna come off looking like very uncanny, and we don't want that. So level two is simply just understanding like what are the normal proportions of like a typical humanoid type character. And we're not talking about anything crazy. Like we're talking about that there's a shoulder, there's an elbow, there's a torso, there's a waist, and there's like knees and a foot. This is like level two. Just understanding like the basic level of like what it means to draw a humanoid character in most cases. And then level three is perspective, which this typically is like when you get to like past like beginner type stuff. This is usually the part that kind of like gets people a bit confused on like how's my art get better, like how do you draw so fast, blah blah blah. I like a lot of people who have practiced for a long time, they all have like their own way of doing this, but it's basically just drawing the level two in a 3D plane, right? And it can be from any angle, um, any perspective, any foreshortening type thing, but like just having an idea of like, oh, okay, I'm drawing it from this angle, therefore the three dimensions are going to look something like this. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but just again having being able to maintain proportions um in perspective is really important. And of course, like as you can still do this exercise without like practicing, like to or getting to this level, but it's definitely good that you understand like there are levels to this. And again, like you can vary your shapes. I think I went through iterations of like shapes of like how best to foreshorten my stuff or whatever. It all depends. Right now I'm in a real boxy phase in my life as an artist, and I think I might stick with this for a long time just because it just kind of works for me. But yeah, so this is how I can do it, and this is like how fast I can like understand it. So if you see me drawing very quickly, it's just because I've done this exercise a lot, way before I start doing stuff like this. But everyone's got their own journey, own reasons and stuff, so take it at your own speed. Um, and again, I only say this because I don't want you to get discouraged if like once I start drawing weird stuff, like you're like, oh my god, like how's he? It's like it's because of this. It's literally just because of this. Just understand stuff like this. Okay, cool. So now you understand how I perceive things. Let's talk about fun stuff. Okay, so I have a type. I'm a very Pixar mom enthusiast. I'm like a hot mom type of character type of um so I think there's like two ways we can approach this. I think there's like facial expressions or like kind of typical like proportions of like how big the eyes are, different slants of the eyes, things like that. There's like the badonkadunkas on the chest area, which I think that they're very freeform, a lot more freeform than you think they would be. And then there's like the butt, which in my opinion is like the soul of any type of hot mom character. Um, I'm gonna start with the butt because I think the badonkadunks take like a whole different kind of conversation. All right, so some fundamentals here is all right. I don't want to see anyone using any. Well, I can't see you, so I can't prove it. I can't prove it, but we're not going to worry about any. We're not. There's no perfect shapes in biology, right? Like anything that's like perfectly square or rounded, like that's evil. Like it's weird. So we're not using the circle tool. We're not using any bases. We're not using anything that can make you too static. So I don't want to see any of this. Delete. Like we're not doing this. Okay, stop. Just be loose with it and get the general idea, right? Um, and so let's say like we're gonna do a pose, right? We're gonna do, you know, the back view of a character. This is their torso. Um, oh, quick little tip. So this is like kind of like a typical male character, or really it's kind of unisex, I guess, but this is more of like a male Dorito type build. When we're talking about short stacks and things like that, we're talking like the proportions get a little wonky, right? So now we're gonna talk about like more like small torso, but like wide hip type stuff. So we have to fundamentally like come at this a bit different. No pun intended. Um, so the idea here is like you're gonna want to get the most out of your character, depending on what you're going for. The shoulder width is going to be it basically has to be less than the the waist width, and the more you extend that, the more ridiculous it's going to look. But if you can nail it, it's going to look like just crazy, but like you really want to make sure this waist to hip to shoulder ratio is like pretty strong, like strongly defined for these type of characters. And you can kind of modify the rest, and then it doesn't really matter like what you do with the chest, like whether you make it like this or even like this. It actually doesn't matter as long as you keep the same proportions. Like it's still gonna look very like stylish to put it that way. So keeping this figure in mind, we're gonna draw a back view wide butt character real quick. So I'm gonna draw, just for explanation reasons, I'm gonna draw like just like the figure that is currently in the white, just so you can kind of see it kind of broken down a little bit. And again, we're working on a 3D plane, right? So like this is not a 2D figure. Even if it's back, like it's basically like directly back facing you, it's still a 3D shape. Just keep that in mind. So we have the back, and as we know, the spine is an S curve, or if you didn't know, now you know. The spine is not straight, so we're not gonna draw a straight line. We're gonna draw it. The body will go like, it'll go like out. So it's like jutting forward, right? So if we were to draw like a circle, it's like curving inwards, and that's where the first S comes from. And then the second circle, which is the hip. Now, if this is the shoulders here, that means the hips basically got to be like, they have to be wider than this to make it the character, the way it is. So we're gonna draw basically just a big circle, really. And if the S is going forward, now it's gonna come back, so the butt can kind of protrude outwards towards us. And another good shape you can use is a triangle, because if you put a triangle like here, it kind of reminds it, oh, like now we're kind of shooting back out. So that's actually a really helpful shape I use a lot to like put creases in, even for like the bubanis. Let's say like you have like the clavicle here, and like the shoulders, like and like the starts down here. It's like if you put the triangle here, it kind of helps you guide like the chest area too. And even like for the down part of the cleavage, if you use another triangle, it just helps you like make that mental crease, right? So it's a pretty quiet shape that I don't think I've never heard of it. People talking about it too much when they like draw things, but these triangles really help a lot when it comes to like making these curves really pop out. Anyway, yeah, so definitely keep in mind with these triangles. So anyway, I'm using a triangle here. You can also use a triangle kind of up here too to kind of get that S in there, but yeah, it's up to you. Anyway, so actually I'm gonna change direction, but a little bit. Let's do, yeah, it's fine. Okay, and I'm actually gonna go this way to make it more dynamic anyway. So now she's twisting this way, and then the butt's like twisting this way, just to make it interesting. So again, I'm gonna put the triangle here. You can kind of think of like an underwear line too. Okay. Now, there's some butt magic here. So, the way I perceived, like, we're trying to get away from just using like circles and stuff to like draw butts. Like, we're trying to like have a base level, like increase our anatomical knowledge to make it more interesting and more like, oh, like it's unbelievable, but like it does make it more believable in a weird sense. So there's kind of like two parts to the glutes. I'm not gonna like get a diagram because like this isn't a science class. But when you look at the butt, it kind of like connects here. It's kind of like this is actually like the actual muscle, like the dimple anyway. And this is like kind of like where you can have like two pieces, right? So you can have the part that goes into like the I guess the beginning crease of it, like from the lower back. So you can have this go up and down, and then you can have starting. So here's another tip too. When you're connecting a rounded shape to another, like to a dimple or something like that, to like an anchor point, there's two ways to do it. You can start from the anchor point down, but I think that it doesn't capture the roundness well. You want kind of want to start where like the opposite where the anchor point starts. So if this is like the bottom of like the butt, I guess, triangle here. I'm gonna start from like this part to capture like all the meats to here. So now it's like a natural. Now without me really having to like change the way I do like the shape, it just kind of has more like weight. Like it's like shooting like that's like more gravity. You know what I mean? So even the way you start from point A to point B, even if it's the same connection, actually does make a difference. Like whatever has more gravity, you want to give that more of the rounded, as opposed to like having to make up for it going to the other side. If that makes sense. Like it's hard to explain. I'll do it a lot, so like, you'll see it more. But it's something I think about. But anyway, and so with that glute dimple thing in mind, I'll make it green just to make it easy to understand. Okay. So now with that in mind, we'll say that dimple's here. I'm going to connect here. And this is gonna be like crazy over exaggerated. I'm gonna draw a triangle here for the crease, just so it's just easier for me, my brain to understand. And then, like kind of like I said, I'm gonna start from, instead of going from the dimple here, I'm gonna go from the anchor point down here and connect it here. Almost like a clap. And of course we're not gonna have to draw like this. We don't need to draw every butt like this, but these are just like the extreme ends of everything. Now, also like to keep in mind, like we're drawing organic shapes, so this is a 3D shape. So if I were to draw like kind of like a contour line, it's going like this, and from the dimple to like the, I don't want to say crack, but the separation point, it's going like this. It's really important to keep these contours in mind, so you can imagine like the butt shape, you know. And then again, if we were to draw contours, it's kind of like this, and I'm gonna start from here, kind of go to where I imagine the dimple would be, and then dimple it up, go up, and then this is crazy extreme, I'm aware, but this is the kind of like mindset you have to have. Like you gotta go all in. And if you were to draw like underwear, it's like, you know, typically the underwear doesn't like go all the way down. This is weird. So like going from like maybe like the middle part to like upper of the cheek, you draw like underwear like this. And now we have like kind of like a loose, you know, underwear type thing. And then for the leg connection point too. So this is kind of, I don't know, I don't know if it's baller knowledge at this point or what, but in my opinion, when you draw like more thick set characters with a bit more like fat, I guess, there's gonna be like creasing that goes out. So you kind of want to go from like it's kind of explained, but like you know, like under the legs, like the thigh, where go to butt meets the thigh, kind of like it overshadows a little bit. So this, imagine this being like the shadow, like the connection point. So you can kind of draw like folds going from like under the connection to like the leg, right? So we're just gonna draw like, you know, like 1, 2, no, 3 even. Same thing here, 1, 2, 3. And then we can erase it a little bit, just kind of like give it a little bit less, but just kind of imply that it's there. And then we can even erase a little bit of this. So it's because it's not just like a hard shadow, but it's gonna be a lot deeper here because like just there's a lot more shadow going on between like the connection of the legs and everything. And then, in my opinion, from the opposite end of the like bottom of the underwear, and kind of like where the end of the butt hits, there's gonna be like a little dimple that protrudes out a little bit here. And then it's gonna look crazy until I put it all together. And you can kind of connect, like, again, you kind of want to start, however you draw this, you want to bend outwards as opposed to inwards. So bending outwards, you kind of want to connect the widest part of the butt to kind of like where the leg starts, kind of like this. And then you can have the dimple kind of like protrude out. Sorry, it's got a bad dimple. Kind of like this. Wow. And then you can kind of make the crease kind of like go into the dimple a little bit. It's like a more whatever. And now, and again, this is like in a very extreme, like they're actively like clapping or something. Like this is like a crazy motion right now. But again, we're not doing anything too crazy. It's all just like intentional choices that actually like lead up to something. And again, since it's like a rounded shape, if you were to imagine like so when it comes to shadows, you don't want to draw like random like whatever. You always want to have a connection, like a point where it starts, a point where it ends. When you draw like a shape of a shadow. So I mean, imagine the shadow would kind of stop like around here because the kind of curves upwards, you know. And I'm gonna start at the end of here, like the butt connection point, like to the thigh where it gets the thinnest anyway. So I'm just gonna connect the line like this. Now I'm just gonna shade it in. And the same thing on the other side. Well, actually, hold on. Let me finish the leg. So the leg is basically just a cylinder. It all looks like muscly, but like it's just a cylinder. And the cylinder can only be so wide. And we could draw a straight line, but that's not how 3D works. So it's curving inwards like this, right? So we're gonna draw a curved. We can draw it lightly too, just for like a guideline. So we're gonna draw a light line, and it's probably gonna end like right here, really, because it's kind of where this ends. So this is gonna be the end of the leg, width anyway. And we can be a little loose with it, so we're just gonna kind of draw it down, and then we'll have that be like kind of like the building point there. And then same thing over here. So we drew little creases. I'm just gonna darken up here because it's more shadow. All right. Same thing here. We're going to kind of, you know, make sure that it gets strong shadows here, weaker shadows here. We're gonna do a little dimple here. We're going to, it's just like a cylinder. So I'm just going to draw a straight line down, understanding that it's a 3D shape, so I'm gonna curve in. And now I'm gonna just connect it here. And now I'm just kind of defeat some of the shadow a little bit to make it more, you know, like more natural, I guess. And then I'm just gonna kind of draw a little shadow here, and it's just the bottom of the circle. We're not drawing anything crazy. And now we can kind of play with it. There's gonna be just anatomical knowledge, like there's gonna be another muscle down here, so we can kind of curve into the leg a little bit. And we can kind of do like this, just to make the leg the same on one side of the leg. And this is like, of course it's a bit scuffed, so I'm trying to explain it and draw at the same time. But this is like the extreme end of like if I was when I'm drawing, it's like I tone it back every time I draw because it's like this is just ridiculous. But this is the kind of like mindset where you gotta have where it's like you gotta draw like crazy, and then kind of be able to understand like why do things look so exaggerated? What exactly are you exaggerating? And this is the kind of thing. And then we're gonna talk about connecting it to like the torso. So I guess maybe just like the pelvic, some kind of pelvic fat. So the way this works, right? So of course we know that we're curving inwards. So what you want to do is above the glutes, like always above the butt. There's gonna be a line that curves in. It's just fat, like fat storage. I guess you can think of it like love handles, I suppose. It's probably the best way to describe it. So, and again, this is an organic shape. So we're just gonna make the shadows more deep on the curvy end of the circle. Like that. And we're gonna see on the other side. We look at the top of the glutes, we're just right here. We curve inwards, which is like, again, like love handles. And then we're gonna shadow in the deep, circle-y, shadow there. And then I can't really explain it. I kind of just add like another set of love handles that kind of like just stack on top of the first. I don't know if that's canon, but it just makes my art look cool. I'm sure it's something, but I can't tell you. So I kind of do it again, and then again kind of like darken up the corner there because again it's like a circle, so you kind of just fill it in. Now, this is where the stomach is. Like, if it's hard to explain. It's kind of just what it is, but like above, whatever side is like protruding out, in this case like the body is pushing forward this way, the stomach is going to be here, right? And the stomach connects to like right above like the groin. Of course it depends on the character, but like you don't want to avoid drawing B on these characters. So I do a little stomach, and then again, since the stomach is a curved shape, I'm just going to shadow in like the side here. And then, as we know, the torso, I guess we can kind of delete the size of it here, because, it's a shoulder. But. So, what's important to know is that the waist kind of like the torso is coming from behind the waist, if that makes sense. So, you're not going to draw the torso on top of the waist. It's going to be behind the waist, if that makes sense. So, all we're really going to do here is start the torso, and we're just gonna go up to before the shoulders, really. So I'm just gonna draw like that. And then same thing here. We're just gonna take this, and this is gonna be a bit more straight since it's like protruding outwards. I mean, we can keep it a straight line here, or like a curved line here, so keep it in mind. But there's gonna be a little overlapping that happens here. And then I'm going to draw more of an angle here to balance out because it's a bit too straight. Alright. I might have been tripping on this stomach thing. I'll come back to that. Okay. And then we can kind of emphasize the circle again. Okay. Now, something that's hard to explain is that since we're drawing in 3D, there's going to be like kind of like backlighting. So a pro tip you can do to kind of like, because this tool is kind of 2D in a way, is if you kind of outline the body a little bit with like it just doesn't be like too specific, but like just like lines, it kind of starts giving like a 3D effects, if that makes sense. You can even kind of erase like the original line a little bit, and then all of a sudden you kind of have like a more like, oh, like there's like a 3D element here, like it pops out more. It makes it more dynamic, I guess, if there's just a word for it. So we're actually going to outline a little bit of the same lines we just did. Then we're just going to erase some of the lines here. Then we can even fix up the side a little bit because I think now that I'm looking at it, it's a little funny. Keeping the dimple though, right? And then I'm going to actually widen the hip a little bit, or widen the butt, I guess. Now I'm just gonna like put the little dimple out, and then connect here. And emphasize the shadows a little bit. Alright, cool. How much you do the same thing on the torso? Just gonna outline a little bit to give it more 3D. Okay. And again, like you can be very sloppy. Like the whole point here isn't to have like the super secret sauce to like drawing like you know bottom heavy models or anything. It's just having an idea of like what's going on to like be able to understand like what goes into actually like, illustrating things like this. And it's not the butt crack, I guess, but like the part where like the butt kind of starts going outwards from the back of like the person. There's gonna be like little like I don't know, like butt lines, I guess. I'm not sure what to say. But they're actually the ones that lead into like the original shapes that we did. So you don't really have to emphasize these, but sometimes you can see these emphasized and they kind of make a difference. Okay. And of course, depends on the character, you can add like a little stomach here or not. It's up to you. Typically, like this is where people like when you add like big bazookas or whatever. All you would do is, again, for gravity, you would draw a line coming down, and then a line coming like from the butt upwards, as opposed to like down this way, because that was weird. But if you go upwards, then it has like that natural gravity from like the downturn, and then upwards, like that. Easy peasy. And then again, the back isn't like a square, and it's also not a circle. It's something in between. So really, you can think of it as like if it's in the like last third of the back, it's gonna be a curve. If it's in this section here, it's gonna be straight. So with that in mind, it's like, okay, well, this is basically gonna be a curved object, and it's gonna be a curved object. So if you want to draw like, I don't know, like a bikini, I guess. All you gotta really do is, well, I guess it depends on like how you want to draw the design, I guess. But you can kind of just draw like, when you get to the back, just draw like a line, and then when you get to like the badunkas, I just forgot to draw. I might have forgotten how to draw. Whatever, you get the point. These are circles, and this is a straight line. Okay. And then now like when it comes to like arms and shoulders, like it's kind of a different discipline, like understand like anatomy, but ultimately speaking, my methodology is just connect the dots. So typically your arm goes to, like if you were to juke your arms, it's typically going to go to like your upper shin area. What's the shin? I guess upper leg area. So, and then the middle, like your elbow, is going to be kind of like where your torso meets your waist. So the torso meeting the waist is here. So from like right about here to here, I'm just going to draw a cylinder and a cylinder, and I'm just going to connect them. That's it. Nothing fancy. And then I don't want to bore you with like the anatomical knowledge, but and then just notice always overlapping. So if the shoulder is, if the arm is going into the body, it's gonna like overlap the back a little bit. Just that's how it works. And then the shoulder is always gonna overlap the arm, so it's gonna have a shadow here. And you can kind of go up a little bit. It doesn't have to be like super emphasized, but it's just like knowledge. And then you're gonna have neck muscles, obviously, or like I guess like the shoulders coming from the neck anyway. So the neck's gonna be always over. If you're looking at the back, it's gonna overlap the neck a little bit. And then, you know, this is like really stuff. And the same thing here, from like right about the torso line, I can kind of drag this out for a circle on the cylinder. And there we go. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too far into it unless you guys want a classic, like my mentality on this kind of things, but whatever. And we're not going too specific. Like drawing doesn't need to be like super specific or anything. Just like understanding basic shapes and proportions and stuff. Yeah. So this is an incredibly exaggerated character. It might even look like ridiculous, but like this is like you need to be able to, at least in my opinion, like being able to get to this point where you can push it to its maximum limit is like really important for like being able to like break it down simply. But simple fundamentals go a long way. That's where you get like manga where they like be drawing characters like all kinds of crazy, but it still looks hot somehow. So I'm gonna do it again a bit more quick this time. And I'm just gonna think of like a random pose. Shoot, let me think. Alright, whatever. I'll make it simple. We're gonna do one more for the side. So again, it's gonna be a circle-ish. Don't use any pre-made tools. Just lean into it. So if this is the crease here, I know there's gonna be a triangle here. If there's a triangle here, it kind of protrudes upwards from here. This is gonna be a dimple here, so I'm just gonna connect that here. And I'm gonna go from the bottom here to here. And then I know this is like a dimple here, so I'm gonna connect this to here. I know that the leg is a cylinder, and I know that like at the middle point, this is kind of where it connects. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna just make it more thick here. And I know that I'm not gonna go straight because it's a curved shape, because we're in 3D. So I'm gonna curve it here, and then I'm gonna just shadow it here because we're just facing away from it. And then I know that in this pose, the legs are gonna be appearing to be touching. So I'm gonna draw. There's gonna be a little dimple here, and then I'm gonna end the cylinder here. So I'm just gonna connect these. And then I know the stomach is here because it connects to the torso. And then I know that there's an S curve here. That means it's gonna be a circle here. I know it's gonna be a shoulder here and a shoulder here. I know that there's gonna be like whatever the butt crack muscle, whatever it is here. I know that it's gonna be a muscle connecting this. So I'm gonna draw that here. And honestly, it's all just building blocks. You don't really need to memorize an entire pose to draw. You just need to understand like if you understand like how the poses forms, you can kind of just guess how everything's gonna connect. Like you don't actually need to have like a lot of knowledge on like anatomical if you have a good amount of knowledge on like what good anatomy looks like, yes, you don't need to have like a reference in your face all day, which I'm able to draw fairly quickly. So I just know that like it has to connect, unless it's like a really strange character, like it's gonna have to connect in a very specific way, no matter what. And again, if you ever get stuck, you can just use basic shapes, and as long as you understand like your basic shapes, then you can really draw any pose at any angle, anytime. Of course, it takes practice, but it's just like the baseline understanding, which is why I emphasize it so much. And then also like when it comes from like the side angle specifically, the body again kind of does protrude forward, and the boobs are gonna like try to connect. They connect off the chest, right? So you can kind of draw the torso like disconnected here because like the chest is like what's connecting this to this a little bit. So you can kind of just emphasize like shadows here, connecting it to like the chest a little bit. Again, if you want to make things, if something seems a little flat, you can just outline it a little bit, and then erase the original one a little bit, and then things start popping out a lot more. Which honestly, I wish I knew that a long time ago. I was always trying to figure out like why sometimes my drawings came out a little flat. And it turns out if you just kind of add like this like 3D element to it, it just makes things pop out so much more, which is like super nice. I'm actually make the dimple pop a bit more. yeah, so just really keep in mind like there's just like two spots to like the butt. And things like this again just draw like a triangle, and it really helps you kind of like imagine like kind of like where the shadows start, this kind of thing. Yeah, so it takes practice, but it's nothing crazy. Like I'm not when you see people draw, they're just doing things that they practice for a long time, and but there's no magic to it. Um, I'll do one more in a different post, just so you guys can kind of like see just a different angle. Maybe look at some kind of something. I guess I can do it from the front too. This isn't really a front focus thing, but I'm gonna do it from the front just so you guys can kind of see. So something that I think that a lot of people kind of like don't look at or don't pay attention to is like the stomach. Like the stomach is really important. Like obviously like isn't always emphasized, but like it really does bring art to life in a certain way, depending what you're drawing. You know? So if you imagine like okay, here's like the sorry. Goes this shit over here, right? So let's say we draw cylinders here, right, just to make it easy. So we know that like around here is gonna be where it stops. It's gonna be like a dimple here. So I'm gonna draw a cylinder, or just draw a really straight line. You know, ignore that. Draw this. And then we know that this is like the outer part of the leg, so we know it's gonna extend out more. So it's gonna draw from the part I wanted to emphasize more like their out roundedness. I'm gonna draw a line connecting up. Again, we're not talking about like muscle groups too much. We're just talking about like basic, like what should things look like, kind of. At least to get started on like, you know, editing and understanding. So the dimple's gonna be like around here. So I'm gonna just go a little bit, connect up here. And let's say like this is like a crazy whatever. Like let's say the waist stops here, right? So honestly, just to start, we can just draw a straight line down. So without even really having much of like a reference, like we can kind of already start putting things together. So there's gonna be like abs and stuff. You can imagine like, so this area, like right above the pelvis and stuff like that, this is kind of like the empty section where, so now, this is kind of like where this part is. So there's really not much going on here. Because the ribs haven't even started yet, really. So, and then the torso would kind of start like, again, smaller than the hips. Would kind of be like right here. So we can really just connect these lines like this. Just look for explanation purposes. So, yeah, so from the front angle, what you want to do is, since like the hip is protruding backwards, like if you were to imagine it kind of like from, kind of like a figure standpoint, it's like connecting bent forward, if that makes sense. So you're gonna see more of the torso, or the torso is gonna like overlap the hips a little bit. It doesn't make sense, but imagine the top side of the hips, right? So it's the stomach is protruding forward. So to kind of emphasize like that whole dynamic, you're gonna want to kind of let the torso connect forward, so we can kind of think of it like the abs a little bit. So like, let's say this is like the end of like, let's say this is the rib cage. We're just kind of extending the rib cage down, and then kind of just going off a little bit like that. And then we're going to connect the hips to like, it's like imagine like the butt kind of ends here behind it. So we're going to kind of connect like from like the butt behind to like the side, the torso kind of, if that makes sense. So it's going to look kind of like this, where like the butt's going behind the character. And we can kind of even shadow this a little bit, right? And then we kind of just layer onto that, right? So we can kind of go down a little bit, kind of like the dimple part, kind of layer behind that. and then we'll just go forward a little bit, something like that. And now we kind of have like, if we emphasize the stomach, then we kind of have a shadow down here, kind of for the stomach protruding a little bit. And now we kind of have the figure that's like connecting like behind the body, if that makes sense. So now in this case, the hip is gonna overlap like behind the body. It takes a lot. There's a lot of vibes to this, but there is a method to the madness. It's not just, you can't just be horny and like, you know, pray. You gotta actually have like a way going into it. Then we can kind of, since this kind of extends down, kind of connect it to the body, which make things what's the word? Symmetrical, you know? So something like this. This is kind of how you start like getting that pudge, like that really curvaceous skin effects, you know? So again, you don't really need a reference for a lot of these. Once you kind of get the idea, even with the legs, you kind of go like behind the body a little bit. Right. Of course, this is like a really rough example. It's just me trying to explain it to you. Okay. So now we kind of talked about the back a little bit. We talked about, we're really talking about the butt. We talked about the front a little bit, very loosely. We can go back to it if I feel compelled to. So I think now we can kind of talk about like the boobs, because I feel like that's for a lot of people that's kind of what they came here for. So I guess I'm sure you've seen this all the time, where people describe like the boobs hanging out the chest kind of like water balloons, you know? And I think it's a good example. But I do think there's kind of another thing to emphasize. It's kind of like, it's the pull and stretch of it all. So yeah, like we have like, you know, let's say like a water balloon, right? A water balloon, right? And a pro tip when you're drawing is like, emphasize gravity with shadows. So this is the bottom of, if gravity's pushing it down this way, this like circular shape, you can kind of erase kind of the upper half a little bit. So it's more, it's less defined, and it feels like it's weightier on the bottom, right? And we need to emphasize the shadows down here, and then now it just feels heavier downwards, right? And then let's say the chest is kind of like, the connection points here, let's just say for whatever is here, as opposed to just kind of having a direct connection here, we can actually kind of have like a pull, like it's getting pulled taut or tight, so we can actually make it seem more like it's pulling, kind of like this. Yeah, I know what it looks like, by the way, but that's not, just bear with me, okay? So kind of having like that tight. Sorry, maybe I should make it. It just makes gravity feel like it's pulling more when things are getting constricted and moved, right? So, and the same thing with like the squish, right? So it's like, let's say, here's like the floor. And then let's say this is the floor here. If it's smushed, then it's going to be flat on the bottom, more or less. Maybe like rounded outwards a little bit because it's like there, like the shadow underneath. And then if we're imagining like this same shape, it's going to be very organic and like squashed, right? So you kind of want to play off the straightness of here, and then kind of have like the overspill go over the sides, obviously, and like curve into like the ball, you know. And of course, like this takes practice too, but really the biggest thing is like have the one side be squished and have the other side overcompensate the squish and kind of like mellow out, you know. And then imagine like the shape, you know. Same thing here, you know, it's curved this way, you know, it's kind of like very, very flat, you know. And then again, we can emphasize the bottom here with like more shadow. So this is like a very loose idea of kind of like where my head is at when it comes to drawing the boobs and stuff. The bum. Bazonkadunkas. Sorry, I'm being a perfectionist. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. So when we start like free balling, no pun intended, we can kind of imagine like let's say we have two water balloons stacked on a so let's say we have a cone, right? just a or not a cone, but like a cylinder, just a random cylinder. Means nothing. It's nothing, you know. And then we have two water balloons coming off. So we gotta imagine like where's the flat gonna be? If we're imagining a squish, there's gotta be a squish somewhere, and a squish is gonna be flat. So we can kind of imagine like, okay, it's gonna be riding along the surface of this cylinder object. So we know that the squish is gonna go over and off screen, like behind here somewhere. So we can kind of curve upward. And we know that the torso is, you know, it's a box, right? So we know that the torso, the breast muscle in general, like the pectoral anyway, kind of goes into your shoulders, right? So it's gonna go kind of off into like the shoulder, right? So that's all gonna be like flat. And then if we imagine the other side, and again we can use another triangle here, so we can go what direction is this? 1 and 2. So we can just go ahead and shadow this up a little bit. And this is all for guidelines, right? And if we want to kind of finish the shape a little bit, kind of, you know, it's a circle. If we go on the other side, I'm just going to flip it just to make it easy. We're going to have a flat. We're going to curve upward with the gravity, like the weight. So we're going to start down here. That's where most of the curve is going to happen. And we're going to go upwards, kind of like that. We're just going to delete everything behind it. And then all we're doing is completing the circle, really. And we can draw another triangle here because it's going to be like a crease in between. And now, just like that, we have the squishing physics. And then if we keep the shoulder's going to be here, we can go ahead and connect the muscle to the shoulder, like this. And then, you know, we have a clavicle here, which I think I've explained in the other video, so I'm not going to go into it too hard here. Now, just like that, now we have this. We have squishing physics. And then, you know, if we gave the water balloons a bikini, you know, we curve with the, like, you don't want to just start drawing flat. Don't ever, as soon as you start drawing flat things, it's going to look flat. You have to always draw along the shape, always. As soon as you stop doing that, you'll notice your drawings start looking kind of funny. And we don't want that, unless you're drawing a funny drawing. We can do it like this. And then we're just going to keep it from behind the thing. Easy peasy. No reference, just straightforward stuff. Actually, this is probably look more like this, since we're kind of going to the extreme just to make a point. Maybe something like this. And we'll say it moves around or something, I don't know. And again, if we were doing the torso, so let's say we're looking at the bottom of the torso facing upwards, it's gonna look like this, right? So it's gonna be curved upwards, because if you imagine like the circles like this, it's gonna be curving like this, I guess. So just imagine it like this, and then let's say like the head is beep, and then we're going on the bottom of the head, and then up of the head. I'm gonna shade this just for explanation reasons. So, yeah. It's sometimes gravity. Sometimes when you draw kind of horny, it gets kind of weird, depending on like how the gravity actually works. We're artists. We're not physicists. So if we draw something unrealistic, it's fine. But again, as long as we capture like, even in the unrealism, like how the gravity still affects it in that unrealistic pose or position, it still adds a lot of weight to it. So even from an upwards angle, now we're looking at the under boob or water balloon, if you will. We can go ahead and kind of draw like, you know, make it symmetric. So, you know, I want the weight to be on the bottom corner here because that's just how it would work with the weight of like the boobs in that way. And we're just gonna curve upwards, erase underneath, we're gonna loosely complete the shape. We're always doing organic drawing here. We don't need any tools or anything like that. Control Z is a tool. I agree. Your mama. Okay. So with this, really what you want to do is you kind of want to have an idea of like, okay, so it's gonna be a pretty extreme contour line down here. Like the bottom and like wherever the line starts and ends is going to be the sharpest part of it, if that makes sense. I don't know why I just stepped it like that. So when you get to the end of these shapes, you definitely want those to be the most dynamic line. The middle part is really just connecting those two. So it ends here, it ends here. Go this way. And then since we're looking under, let's say this is like like a nun or something. So they got like kind of those like manga-esque uniforms on. So let's just, and then something that's important is sometimes there's going to be a point on the water balloon when it comes to so for that point you kind of want to emphasize, especially if you're looking like under like kind of shadow of like how it connects a little bit. And if you can draw this, it really takes the drawing to the next level in that regard. So just to emphasize that it's like there, you know? I can make a more point of this later, but this is like a weird position to kind of explain it. It just came to mind. And then this is all under boob, so we're going to shade all of this. And then this is going to be a, not shadow here, because this is the point. It's going to be a shadow underneath. Like that. Okay. And then, you know, people like to have like a little shine here and there, so if you want, you can add like a little shine, like here or whatever. And then same thing here, looking under. And then same thing, I wear a uniform on or something. And I'm not a teacher, by the way, as you can tell, so I'm doing my best. I hope to get more fluent at this kind of thing, so I can teach people better if they ask. But again, you just gotta keep in mind, everything is 3D, so as long as you can conceptualize that, you can kind of draw anything. You can draw a triangle here, triangle down here. It just makes it more legible and dynamic. Yeah, so honestly, this is gonna take a lot of practice, like TLDR, right? But I'm going to free draw a little bit, and then I hope that kind of just seeing how it all pieces together helps a little bit when it comes to just like the body types. And I'll loosely go over like expressions and stuff later, and then hopefully like you kind of understand like how it all fits together, because it's not magic, you know, it all makes sense. It's just, you know, like anything else, it's like a little bit of mastery. But when it comes to art and stuff like that, like you just gotta have that dog in you. But I'm going to draw a little bit so you can kind of see how I keep repeating the same methodology with all my drawings, which is how I can be not only consistent but also fairly quick, because I know what I'm looking for. And if something looks off, I know exactly like what I can like deep dive. Like, okay, like what did I do differently this time that's like not making sense? Like if I close my eyes and look at it again, then oh, I know what it is doing, you know. But having that fundamental shape that kind of defines what a person is, or like how you do a figure, it really helps a ton. And I'll shadow that. This is not a hand tutorial, so I'm not gonna go over hands too much. And another tip, it's just make things exist first, and then start going into it. Like you can draw very broadly and still kind of get the main idea very quickly. But if you get lost in the details before you even finish with the foundation of a drawing, like you can get very unmotivated and lost very fast, and you can think that you're much worse of an artist than you think you are, or that you actually are. And it's not true. You just got carried away. Like he's got to slow down, because the more you can grasp fundamental concepts as you're drawing, or even before you start drawing, the faster you can like really just draw something ridiculous and then make it actually something later. Because you know all the pieces already. You're not like discovering what the pieces look like before you even start the puzzle. You know what I mean? So definitely take your time. Yeah, the last thing I want to do is I think that the facial expressions, or like certain facial shapes, really kind of sell like the whole final image a lot of times, like beyond just the body. So I do think that there's a lot of different ways you can draw a character, obviously, and expressions go a long way. So, we're gonna kind of stay away from like, too many really round shapes, because that kind of gives off like an impression of like innocent and like young, which we're not doing. So, um, in my opinion, the best way to approach eyes and expressions is kind of start with basic shape. Well, always start with basic shapes, obviously, but for eyes, especially, the best shape in my opinion is just a rhombus. I don't know if it's a rhombus. That's not the right word. Sorry. A slanted parallelogram. You guys want to geometry? So really, it's just one, two, three, four, and then what you're gonna do is you're going to this side's gonna be lighter bars, and this side's gonna be harder, maybe deeper is the word I'm looking at. They all sound weird. All right, we'll do harder in terms of like the shadows. So what I mean is bars. So what I mean is like this side's gonna be heavier with the shadows, so you're gonna kind of overlap this a little bit, a couple times, and then even going up to like the eye point, you can actually just go over this part again. And if you just erase the ending here a little bit, then now you have an eye. And you didn't really do anything. All you did was you just drew like a shape and you just buffed it up a little bit. And if you, depending what kind of artist you are, you can draw the tear ducts if you want. It's up to you. And then the next big thing that adds a lot of impact to your art are the eyelids. So I do 2 upper and 1 bottom, meaning all I do is I pick a random point around here, like around here. You can kind of do anywhere based on how you feel, but like you really just draw a really thin line from like here, say here. So you're just gonna kind of like do this, or something like that. And then what you want to do is go up 1. This is like the upper eyelid. You're gonna go a little past this, like so you can go like, you know, like 1, 2, and you're just gonna go over like this. Sorry, you're gonna go over like this, and then you can kind of put the people wherever, you know, like whatever. Now, if you want to sell like the sultry effect that I typically draw a lot, just because of how I draw my characters, what you want to do is typically like the half-lidded look is what most characters have when they're being funny. So all that look really is when it comes to drawing it is just deepening, kind of like lowering, let's say it's like halfway, whatever. So you can kind of like fill this in a little bit, and then you can draw the eyelashes, which the eyelash, all I'm doing is this. 1, 2, 3, whatever. I'm just drawing a slant line, so like slanted, 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 slanted. And I kind of deepen the shadows a little bit more on the end. Deepen it more here. I could do this better. I guess there's different ways you can draw the eyelashes, but I think the people's are messing me up. So I guess they can go higher too. So sorry, let's try this like that for this eyelid specifically. It's such a heavy eyelid. Just like that. And then on the bottom you can do the same thing. Oh, sorry, for the bottom you can draw 1 more eyelid. So it's kind of the same as like the preliminary one. So it's kind of like connect it like here, really, and then you can kind of like draw like little things here. I usually draw from the second eyelid is where I draw the eyelashes, which is how it works. So I'm not sure what I'm saying that. So like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to get that half-lidded look down set, you want to draw half the eye really. In most cases, let's see how it feels. Yes. And then a cool effect you can do to kind of like add like a shade to it is if you are trying to shade something that's already like hard inked, you can just draw really thin lines adjacent to it. And then like I'm just drawing like a thin line under the hard line. So like, you know, like you have this and you like draw like really thin. So you can just kind of do like really thin lines. You kind of get that like shadow look. Then you can draw the eyes separately, kind of like this, and then there you go. Then you can just like add like an erase here. And this is kind of rough because I'm trying to explain and draw at the same time, but now you can have like a base for it, like an eye here. To do it a bit more quickly, so I can maybe try to draw it a little bit better. You know, let's say like it's more slitted, I guess. And again, I'm kind of using the same fundamental shape here. I'm just modifying different parts of it, making the bottom longer, the top like more upward, whatever. But it's always gonna be, rather if it's left, it's gonna look like this. If it's right, it's gonna look like this. To me, for most eyes anyway, unless they're very strange. So I'm gonna just buff up these eyes, and then I'm just going to do like an eyelid here. Or not people, sorry. And draw 1, 2. Then eyebrow, or you can kind of really draw anything. You can draw like any shape. You can draw like this. You know, you can draw like this. You can just honestly just draw a line if you want to. It doesn't really matter. is, now again with eyelashes. One on the bottom. There you go. So these expressions kind of really sell like the eye look. And of course, like if you're kind of going like more ahagayo, which if you know, you know. You know, we draw, you know, same base. All you're doing is, and of course, as you draw these eyes, you can kind of feel out like how it looks and how you want to change it. It's really up to you. I'm just kind of teaching you more of like a base. You like really all you gotta do is draw like a quarter of the eyelid up from the bottom, like this. So I'm zooming in so far. So let me do this like on a little bit bigger scale. I have a bad habit of zooming in too much. Alright, so let's do like this. Alright, so if you want to do like more ahageo for whatever purposes you're trying to do, you're just gonna want to draw the bottom pupils like really looking up in most cases. And then you can imagine like the, you know, whatever. And then if you want, you can, depending on what kind of artist you are, you can add a little bit more effects to it, like the heart thing they do sometimes. So you can add like the, you know, little heart here. I'm sorry. Like one, down. Something like that. If I could draw a heart, you know what I mean? I'd draw the heart like big or something. One. This is art, by the way. It takes time. Something like that. But you just draw like whatever shape the pupil is, and you kind of just keep the same thing. But anyways, you can, the less people you show on the bottom, the more intense it is, right? So if it's like this, and you know, you get like the effects. You kind of get the effects there. And then with the mouth, most of the time, it's gonna be a triangle when it comes to this kind of expression, because like, you know, you have like the neutral expressions of like, you know, smile, neutral, sad, and then all you do is enhance the corners, kind of erase the connection to the middle, and then like downplay the middle a little bit, like for the crease of the mouth or whatever, the bow, like there you go. And it works the same with all of them. It just depends on the character really at that point. Yeah, but when it comes to like these type of expressions or these type of characters, typically in whatever situation they happen to be in, something I like to gravitate towards, like having the lip fullness, you know. So I think triangles kind of help a lot actually with this, because then you can kind of like round out the edges. So we like round it. And then you can have like the teeth here. Then you have like the mouth here. And we can just fill it in. Might not be my best mouth, not gonna lie. Actually, no, it's not too bad. And then, you know, there's a million ways to draw noses. It really doesn't matter too much. I was drawing a nose like this. I'm gonna curve the bottom a little bit just cause like the lips anyway. If I can just draw a little indent for the lips. And if I want, I can, depending on how big the character's lips are, It's just kind of outlining the mouth a little bit, but not too much, just enough to like get the impression that it's a thick lip character. And then you want to draw the creases here for when the upper and bottom lips meet. And then without really me having to do too much. Now we have a thick lip character doing whatever activity, really enjoying that food that they have. Yeah, so really the biggest thing, if you get nothing else from this, like, just take it slow and really study like whatever artist or genre you're inspired by. There's always a method to the madness, and if you get the fundamentals, you can adapt your style to their style very easily without having to like do a whole training montage, you know?